everyone goes, oh, you have to go to Tower Mina, which, as we know, is a setting for the White Lotus. It is very, very touristed. I'm looking around to see what else is closed, and then poof, Noto comes up. And I said, I know Noto, and it was an episode of The Chef's Table. They eat granita for breakfast. So, sign me up, right? With all these big landmarks, the top 10 lists, the bucket lists, with that comes all the crowds. Most people, when they come back from work, how was your vacation? And they go, it was great, but I need a vacation from that. When you go to a smaller place, they just suddenly become so much more relaxing.
Do you feel like there's a difference in how locals treat you in lesser touristed destinations?
When you go to a smaller town, the hosts have just more time to talk with you and are more interested genuinely.
Bratislava is having a moment.
It's just really the epitome of cool. My family found a tea house in a converted bomb shelter. I didn't see it in any guidebook. When you go to a lesser travel spot, go in with an open mind, because that's the beauty of travel, right? These make great stories over dinner parties and a beer.
Do you have one piece of advice for listeners going to these lesser known destinations?
This sounds crazy, but I say just...
What do you think of when you think of a European vacation? Maybe you picture yourself gazing at the Eiffel Tower in Paris, riding a gondola along a narrow canal in Venice, or savoring tapas at an outdoor cafe in Barcelona. But what if I told you the real magic, the heart-opening, soul-stirring kind, lives in the places that aren't on every postcard? I'm Angie Orth, and today we're veering off the beaten path. We're trading crowds for cobblestones, tourist-packed lines for undiscovered traditions, and tick-the-box rushing for relaxed roaming. If you're looking to add a little something different to your next trip across the pond, then travel expert Gerald Tan has just the place for you.
Welcome back to Traveling with AAA, everybody. I am thrilled to introduce today's guest, Gerald Tan, who is a travel and food journalist and author and host of the food travel series Soul Food. Thank you so much for being with us today, Gerald.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You recently contributed to a story about 10 underrated European cities for Westways and AAA Explorer. What was it that drew you to these lesser-known destinations instead of maybe the typical hotspots?
So I think with each city it was quite different, really. York was more of a love affair with a show that I watched called The Last Tango in Halifax, about geriatric love set in Yorkshire. And, so they travel around all these towns, and the city just looked really, really quaint and beautiful. Now, I think it's about 2 miles worth of walls, so the longest in England, with Noto, which is in Sicily. That was due to a wedding. And when you're there, everyone goes, oh, you have to go to Tower Mina, which, as we know, was a setting for the White Lotus. So it's this cute little city perched on a hill, beautiful cliff rolls into the ocean. It's all gorgeous. And these streets are tiny, but then there's Gucci and there's Chanel and Louis and Fendi. And so it is very, very touristed. So, of course, when I'm there, I'm looking around to see what else is closed. And then poof, Noto comes up. And I said, I know Noto. And it was an episode of The Chef's Table. So I went specifically for the gelato, or actually rather it's more the granita, because they eat granita for breakfast. So, sign me up, right? Ice cream for breakfast, Angie, any day. And I'll tell you, I went there after dinner at night and I had 4 scoops of ice cream. And the next morning I had to go back and had 5 for breakfast. And then after lunch, I had 3 more, and then I left. So, 12 hours, like 13 scoops of ice cream. I was in heaven. And then the final one I wrote about was Vaduz, which is the capital of Liechtenstein. And I'm a bit of a geography nerd. I think all of us travelers are. And Liechtenstein has that interesting, reputation of being one of only two double landlocked countries on Earth. So that's what drew me to those cities. So lesser known, but very, very exciting and definitely worth checking out.
When you're going to these lesser known destinations, is it something you add on to bigger cities or more popular tourist hotspots? Is it usually an add-on for you?
I think it really is. With all these big cities, there are your favorites, they're the big landmarks, the top 10 lists, the bucket lists. But with that comes all the crowds. There are lots of tourists. Sometimes getting reservations can be a real pain. If you go during high tourist season, sometimes, you're paying top dollars for hotels, for trains. You might end up on a train and not have a seat. So there are lots of things to contend with, which when you go to a smaller place, what we call maybe a second tier, third tier, villages, towns, they just suddenly become so much more relaxing. And that's, I think, maybe with age, like that's what we seek in a vacation. You know how most people, you ask them when they come back from work, how was your vacation? And they go, it was great, but I need a vacation from that, and that almost defeats the whole purpose, right? And so what I have done, exactly what you say, it is an add-on city. So I go to, the bigger places, and then I look around and I sort of go, where else can I go, to tack on? Maybe it's a 1-2 day, maybe even a 2-nighter trip. And that's when you can really relax.
Do you feel like there's a difference in how locals treat you in some of the lesser touristed destinations?
Everywhere you go, you're going to find people who are just so welcoming and people who've just had enough. I mean, that is just the nature of today, right? Especially when you talk about cities that are completely geared towards tourism. I think when you go to a smaller town, a smaller city, perhaps you will feel warmth and sometimes more curiosity because they might not be used to a tourist coming from, Namibia or Nebraska. They're just really curious. And that's something that I think is my favorite part about traveling. It's really talking to people and trying to figure out what makes that society tick. As a journalist, I am also interested sometimes in the politics of it, the economics of it, and the history of a place, of course. But I think now all of us, that's all embedded in the travel experience, right? When you eat something, you're no longer going, oh, what's in here? Most of us are curious, how did this become? So we have all these kind of niggling questions that emerge anyway. And I think you really get these answers just from talking to locals. And I do feel that you have more time to do that in a smaller city. I mean, they're more relaxed. And they sometimes, I think the hosts have just more time to talk with you and are more interested genuinely.
You've told us some of the pros of going to these lesser known destinations off the beaten path. What are the cons, if there are any?
I think it comes down to your needing to do a bit more research because every little town has its quirks. Southern Europe, for instance, we know all about siesta hour. Don't plan anything from between 12 and 4 because most likely it'll be closed. And different countries have those differences, right? Some of them open really late. So I am in a town and I could not find breakfast. I could not find breakfast before 8:30, and I'm an early riser. And if I can't have breakfast till 8:30, no ice cream until 8:30, we have a little issue here. So you think you've done your research, and yet you get caught out. So I think that is one thing to just be more mindful that when you go to a lesser travel spot, you might have to put in even more research and just find out, but also go in with an open mind because that's the beauty of travel, right? I mean, these make great stories over dinner parties and a beer.
And now the AAA Travel Minute. Renting a car overseas can give you the freedom to really roam. And with a little planning, it's a breeze. To secure better rates and a good selection of vehicles, start by booking well in advance. Next, apply for an international driving permit. It's a card that translates your license information into 10 languages. Many countries require you to carry it alongside your regular license.
Even where it's not mandated, the permit is handy if you get pulled over. You can apply for one at your local AAA branch. Of course, you'll need to familiarize yourself with local driving laws. Some road signs, like the stop sign, are the same everywhere, while other signs and rules vary. Get started with the U.S. State Department's online guide called Driving and Road Safety Abroad. Remember that you'll need insurance that's valid in the country you're driving in. Consider purchasing it directly from the rental agency, but also keep in mind that some travel insurance providers offer policies. Finally, on pickup day, inspect the car and document any scratches or dents. Then buckle up and hit the road. This has been the AAA Travel Minute. Well, let's talk about 5 of your up-and-coming places to visit in Europe. And I want to start not in Sicily, even though everybody's talking about the White Lotus in Sicily and Noto, but let's talk about Bordighera, because that is another hot spot that might be the next Sicily, might be the next Taormina.
I hope it does, and I hope it doesn't, because I feel like I found my private sanctuary in Bordighera. So it's only about 20 kilometers away from the border of France. So I discovered it by way of going to Monte Carlo, the Côte d'Azur, the French Riviera, and you can start sort of in Nice, and then you travel east, and you get to Monte Carlo, and then you come across the border, and then first you hit the bigger one, Ventimiglia, which is much more famous. Then you hit Bordighera, a small little town, before you get to San Remo. But Bordighera has this really interesting old charm, old world allure. And it was a favorite of a queen, and so she has a palace there. Monet went there to paint, I think, something like a few dozen paintings, because the botany, the botanicals there are so interesting. It was the setting for different novels through time. The most recent of which, Call Me by Your Name. The seafront is a pedestrian way. And it's called Lungomare Argentina, Lungomare being the seafront. And it was named so because Evita Peron was visiting, of course, the First Lady of Argentina, 1947. So they renamed this entire walkway, the promenade, after her, and has remained since then. And it's the longest Italian promenade on the Riviera. So it's got really, it's a seaside town, but also right on the hills. So you imagine already, you take a little hike and the whole vista opens up, typically Italian, of course. And Bordighera has this very little known claim to fame. It is to this day the northernmost European city where date palms naturally grow. The town has exclusive rights to supply the palm fronds to the Vatican every year during Easter. And so that's what Bordighera is also kind of known for.
Oh, what a fun fact. What do you think people should know before they visit?
It's one of those seaside towns where Italians go to vacation. So the first spot I did when I went there was the beach, because that's what it's known for. And when you're there, you are surrounded by Italians. That's all you hear. And I have to say that's something really charming, because you're not going to get that in Florence. You're not going to get that in Rome. You're not going to get that in Milan. Because I'm a food writer predominantly, I think you have to know about the cuisine. You've got specialities that you will find only in sort of the Bordighera, San Remo area. And that's one of those beautiful things about Europe, where food is so hyper local and the specialities that you find from town to town are so different. My favorite one there is called Sardinera. Sardinera is a cheeseless pizza. It's like a focaccia meets a cheeseless pizza, I would say, because you have a fluffier bread and on which they put a tomato paste, and then they put anchovies on there. And so it's, and you slice it into squares. So you can eat it like a pizza, but also like a focaccia sandwich snack, have it at breakfast, have it at tea time, savory. And of course, you can imagine the anchovy, giving it that beautiful umami. And olives, of course. So olives are really big there. So I would say every meal I had there started with pâté di oliva, which, as we know, olive tapenade, so that's also really big there. Oh, branda kuyun. Branda kuyun strange dish made from cod and potatoes. It's almost like mashed potatoes with boiled cod, in which you put lots and lots of lemon juice and parsley. And it can be eaten almost like a dip on crackers, as a side salad. Um, just really lovely, light Mediterranean flavors. So I think that's what I think you can expect, you know. And of course, lots of ravioli, because they do love stuffed pasta there, but beautiful, beautiful pesto and lots of things with olives. So
Mm.
yes, so you have to go to Bordighera for the seaside vibes, you know, clean, beautiful air, lots of local flavor, and the food.
Okay, I feel like you're going to tell me the food in every place, so let's find out. Do you feel the same way
Sorry.
about the, no, because this is your wheelhouse, and I love it because I'm taking notes for my inevitable trip to Europe this summer where I hit all these destinations. So I go to London. I've probably been a few dozen times. I love it so much. And it kind of sucks me in because there's so much to do and see. There's so many layers of history. So sometimes I don't go anywhere else. And that is on me. I definitely need to get outside London when I visit the UK. So tell us about York and what makes it special and why people should make it a point to visit.
Train travel in the UK is positively fabulous. It cuts your driving time by more than half. So, if you were to take a train from London's King's Cross to York, it'll get you there in 1 hour and 52 minutes. So, when you talk about proximity, from London, you can jump 3 hours and you're up north in Liverpool. 2 hours and you're down by the coast of Cornwall and Devon. So definitely you must explore beyond the Bath, beyond the Stonehenge, to see all these beautiful towns. York is this medieval walled city, which already, as you can imagine, has a lot of allure. And York has been named several times as Europe's most haunted city. And part of it comes from its history, invaded by, the Romans, the Vikings, during all those medieval era wars, the English Civil War. So you got perhaps a lot of unsettled souls, lots of castles, beautiful churches. You can definitely go on a lot of haunted tours. But I also think York is just, a very walkable city. I could go on ad nauseum about the food in York.
Give me one food item we should think about in York.
Yorkshire pudding. I mean, it's named for the whole town. You'll find it everywhere. A staple, of course, of that quintessential English experience, that Sunday roast lunch. Sunday meat potatoes, it's either a beef roast, lamb roast, comes with, boiled mushy peas if you wanted to, lots of roast vegetables, parsnip potatoes, lots of gravy, and with that gravy to sop it up.
Is there anything Harry Potter fans should know about York?
The beauty about going to York by train, of course, is that you start at London's King's Cross, which already, Harry Potter fans know platform 9 3/4. They have actually made that into attraction now. So they have a cut built into a wall, platform 9 3/4. Well, right next to it is the train where you bought to go up to York. An hour and 15 minutes later, you come right into the center of town and you head straight for the shambles. It used to be called the flesh shambles, which was an iteration of the word the flesh shelves, because this was the butcher street. So, flesh would be on shelves hanging. And it's now turned into this cute little shopping street because it's retained all its charm all these years. I'm talking about narrow cobbled lanes, and the buildings are all wood framed, just absolutely charming. You get a pie shop, you have, like a little magic shop. Well, the setting is exactly what the set designers based on when they were making Diagon Alley for the first film and the subsequent films. But that magical scene where the brick walls open up and it opens up to this really bustling street with all the wizards and sorcerers. Well, that's basically the shambles. Now, they are not allowed to market it because they really haven't had a chance to quote unquote prove it, that this was based on it. But everyone who's ever worked on a film says, yup, the shambles is where it is. So, Harry Potter fans can delight in that. And yeah, it is really magical. And it's particularly lovely, I have to say, during Halloween and Christmas, because as you can imagine, the whole town gets right into the spirit of things.
Let's travel a bit south to Vaduz, Liechtenstein.
It is the capital of Liechtenstein, one of the smallest countries in the world, and it is sort of sandwiched in between Switzerland and Austria. They don't have their own currency, so the beauty of it is you can just use your Swiss francs that you've carried over from Zurich, which is the most likely way you're going to do this. But it's so charming because the capital is completely dominated by this hill on which sits the Vaduz Castle. And the castle today is still the residence of the Prince of Liechtenstein. And you can climb up the hill through all these homes, and as you go up, you really do see the Rhine River below, and that's the border to Switzerland. So immediately you're seeing Switzerland, you're seeing the Alps behind, and the higher you go, you can almost see the entire country. Now, Vaduz Castle itself is close to the public. It's not a museum. It's not a quote unquote tourist destination per se, because it is the living residence. But once a year, and we're coming up towards it, close to it, August 15th is Liechtenstein's National Day, and it is a street party, quote, country party, where the doors of the castle are open and everyone can go in for a party. Getting to Vaduz is a little bit of an adventure because you almost have to do planes, trains, automobiles, right? You have to fly to a city and then take a train. And so then you take a bus in.
So what do they do when they get there?
You definitely climb up the Vaduz Castle for that gorgeous view. Along the way, there's this very traditional house called the Red House. They've got several museums. Downtown, the city center has been made into a pedestrian-only kind of core, which always, as we know, makes it so much more pleasant when you don't have to contend with traffic. And if you're a nature lover, be prepared. They've created what they call Liechtenstein Trail, and it's a trail 47 miles long that takes you across 11 principalities of Liechtenstein. So you're seeing every part of the country. And you can do it by foot, you can walk it, you can hike it, you can even bike it. They've made it into 5 stages, so you can do them over the course of 4 nights. And they even have an app that you can follow along. So it's really clever because as you travel along the app, you're going to meet this farmer here, this industry there, this church here, and then stay in this town, which is sort of a natural spot for you to rest the night. It's kind of cool to be able to say, I hiked through a country in 5 days and I saw every single part of the country.
Now here's another place. Bratislava is having a moment. So why is this capital city worth a trip?
If I had to distill it to a word, I think it's for the energy. It's in the last few decades that they finally really said, we need to preserve our own history, and they've tried to restore it. They have, along the Danube, come up with new projects, so you've got beautiful parks where you can, sort of like shopping centers that spill over down into the river, and so you can have a picnic. It's just really sort of what I feel the epitome of cool. They've made the the city center, the old town, completely pedestrianized. And it's this young energy that's turning the city, putting it on the map. They've started to put all sorts of statues, brass statues across the city. It's no longer just a stop-off point because it is also one of those, it is one of only 4 European capitals along the Danube. You've got Vienna, you've got Budapest, and you've got Belgrade, right in Serbia. And Bratislava was always the one that, you might get a few hours when you're doing that Danube cruise. But now people are going, maybe you want a night or 2. And you really discover very, very cute little spots. I mean, my family found was a tea house in a converted bomb shelter right in the heart of town. I didn't see it in any guidebook. So, yeah, I mean, Bratislava, as you say, having its moment.
Let's talk about our last place on the list, which is Tbilisi, Georgia. And one of the things that's interesting about this is its geography. It's Europe,
Oh,
it's
totally.
Asia, it's a little bit of both.
Well, it's in the Caucasus, right? So it bordered, Russia is on the northern border, and on the south is Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan. Because of its location, it was part of the ancient Silk Road. It's got all the influences from the east, also from the Ottoman Empire. You see it in kind of the architecture within the city, lots of different enclaves. This is the cradle of winemaking. It's gone back 8,000 years. Very recently, they found urns that date back to 6,000 years. You know that, so it's proven that this is where the whole art almost began. You know, and they were always fermenting grapes in these clay urns. And to this day, you can go on sort of wine tours where they show you the very, very ancient processes of making wine. And it's also where now amber wines, also known as orange wines, you know, something that is very traditional in Georgia. It's white grapes that they ferment with the skins on, so you get all the tannins and the colors and the seeds in some different labels. Some of them even ferment them with the stems, so it changes the color and naturally the flavor. So I think Georgia, because as you say, the geography, it's got lots of interesting history. And for the outdoor lovers, skiing is huge there in the winter. So yeah, you've got the ski element, you've got the winemaking element, and well, for me, it's the food element.
For listeners who are inspired to seek out their own uncrowded European destinations, do you have one piece of advice how they can approach this with curiosity rather than just ticking boxes and sort of satisfying the FOMO that we both suffer from?
This sounds crazy because nowadays maybe we don't do it anymore, but I say just open a map. You know, I love those old school shows where they would blindfold someone and they would throw an arrow on the map and they go, that's where we're going next. And I do that now by opening Google Maps, you know, and I just kind of like zoom in an area and I kind of go, I wonder what's here. You know, there are so many things to discover. And so I think if you're going to approach it that way, the next time you're planning a holiday to Milan, to Frankfurt, you know, you're going to Munich for Oktoberfest, you're going to Copenhagen because you want to visit Noma, you know, whatever the reason might be, just sort of say, all right, what is around here that could be interesting? And you'd be surprised because each country, each state, region, district, they have so many stories to discover. So I think that's it. You know, just there will always be something to see. There will always be something new to taste, something to smell, something to experience. And I think these days we're in this era of experiences, right? So have an open mind and just, well, these days I say let Google Map do the talking and just point somewhere and go.
The next time you're going somewhere that's a bigger city, set aside a day or two to check out something else that is off the beaten path.
The beauty of something that's small is that you can truly feel like you've seen it all. So people who have FOMO, and I definitely do, where you say you've been to London a few dozen times, you probably still have a list of 57 things that you want to do in spring, 87 things you need to do in the summer, right? And it just, the list never ends. It keeps growing, you know, a new museum, a new restaurant. Where does it end? So when you go to a smaller city, you feel like you can tick everything off your list and then some. And there's something quite satisfying about that when you travel. If you tack it onto a bigger holiday, then it becomes such a nice, it almost becomes a reprieve, right? And oftentimes people come back and they go, you know what? That may have been the highlight of my trip.
Speaking of trip highlights, food often tops my why to travel list. And I know I can say the same for Gerald Tan. So be sure to tune in to our next mouth-watering episode when he'll be back to share his coveted list of the top 5 incredible eats in Europe's best-kept secret cities. Gerald Tan, thank you for joining us. And thank you, our listeners, for being with us. If you're planning a trip, be sure to connect with a AAA travel advisor. Check out AAA.com/travel or visit your local branch. This podcast is a production of Auto Club Enterprises. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and leave us a review. I'm Angie Orth. Thank you for traveling with AAA.